This is Average Joe Finances Podcast, episode 18.
You know, that plane is going 100 plus miles an hour, and you look out the window and you realize you're still on the ground. And that's what life is usually like. The problem is if you don't keep going and you don't keep building speed, you will never take off. And that lift off, and once you lift off, the plane soars. Money does the same thing.
Welcome to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. Are you trying to get out of debt, invest, or just not sure where to start? Then this is the place for you. We discuss different ways to get out of the rat race and build your wealth. Join us on this wild ride to financial freedom.
Hey, if you're watching this video on YouTube, be sure to smash that like button and click subscribe. Also, if you're listening to this as a podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on our newest episodes. Be sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. All the links are in the description below. So I had the privilege of interviewing Rocky Lalvani from Richer Soul. He runs an awesome podcast. Actually, he runs two podcasts now. We'll talk about it a little bit in the episode. And it was just really exciting just to have this conversation back and forth with Rocky. He's full of energy. He is just doing big things in his life, and he's helping other business owners with his other podcasts and his coaching. And just a really great guy and really great interview. I was really excited to talk with him. Now, there were some technical difficulties. Unfortunately, there's some issues going on with my video recording on my end. So it's going to be just the cover photo. If you're watching this on YouTube, as this goes on, it's just going to be the cover photo and the audio recording, because the audio still came out okay. So my apologies for that. But I don't want to pass up the opportunity to share such an awesome interview. I really hope you guys enjoy this. It was really fun for me to make. Don't mind the scruff I have going on here. You know, it's No Shave November, and I'm going to support the best way I can. I took some time off of work, so I got the stuff on the sides going, but pretty soon it's just going to be the stash, and that won't last long because my wife hates it. So anyway, let's get into this episode. I really hope you guys enjoy it. I had a good time talking with Rocky, and it's going to be good stuff. Let's go. Hey, how's it going, everybody? We've got Rocky Lalvani on with us today, and we're really excited for him to talk with us and share his story. This is going to be awesome. I did a little research on Rocky, and just looking at his background, I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. So, Rocky, welcome. Really appreciate having you here. If you could, please tell me a little bit about yourself and share a little bit about your story.
Thank you so much, Mike, for allowing me to join you today. And sure, I'd be happy to share my story. I'm an immigrant to the United States. I came here a very long time ago when I was just a toddler, and my parents were essentially starting over life for themselves their second time. When they left India, back then there were currency restrictions, and so they were only allowed to take $25, and that's essentially what they had to start over life with. Thankfully, they had some family here, and a lot of their friends were also immigrating around the same time. And while we started off on the wrong side of the tracks, what I saw was a group of people who very quickly moved up the economic ladder. They worked hard, they worked together and supported each other, and kind of discussed what it is financially that you need to do to survive in the United States. And I just saw that, within 10, 12 years, everyone had pretty decent financial success. And when I was a kid, the parents would get together and I would listen to them talk about what they were doing, how they were doing, and money conversations were open. So I never realized until much later in life that people don't talk about money. And I always knew that school never really taught about money. And I have an MBA. They really didn't teach me about building wealth. And that's unfortunate in society. So I spent quite a bit of time just trying to figure out, why do we struggle with this so much? Because I kind of grew up within a society that didn't struggle as much. I mean, it wasn't that it wasn't hard to succeed, but everyone was given a path and kind of taught the principles of this is how you build wealth over time.
Thank you for sharing that. I just wrote down a couple of notes here, just some things that you were talking about with, the fact that you immigrated here. You said you were 2 years old and your parents were in their 40s.
Correct.
And what you notice is that everybody worked hard and worked together. They figured out how to survive in their new life here in America. And then you said it was about 10 to 12 years. You saw they all were in a good financial spot at that time, and that money conversations were open, like it wasn't a taboo topic, right? Because I see that a lot in most middle-class families too. People don't like talking about money. They feel like if you talk about money, if you have money and you're talking about money, that you're being arrogant or cocky or, conceited, right? But I feel like having those conversations about money is important, especially when you're talking to people of the same mindset, right? So in other episodes that I've had, we talk about having like your tribe and who it is that you surround yourself with. So I feel like if you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people, it's going to breed even more success, which I believe that's the situation your family placed themselves into, which is fantastic. So I really appreciate that perspective. And this also goes to show that you can come over here essentially with nothing. And if you work hard and put forth that effort, that you can be successful no matter what. So it's about taking that grit and determination. So I really appreciate your story. So you had sent me a couple topics that you'd like to talk about. And I think this is a great segue with where you came from to where you are now. If we could talk about money mindsets and what it is about money mindsets to you that you think is important.
Sure. So everyone's got a money story, right? Everyone essentially has a money mindset. And for most of us, these mindsets were created sometime between the ages of about 5 and 13. And you probably all know what they are because your parents might have said to you, we can't afford that. They might have told you money doesn't grow on trees. They might have told you you have to work hard to, to make money, which in one sense you think it's good that they told you that, but now you're stuck with this mindset that unless you work hard, you can't make money. And so you have to struggle to make money instead of saying, hey, how do I effortlessly make money? Maybe they told you rich people were evil. And if you believe that and you start to become rich, you're going to give away your money. That's why people who win the lottery, who get an inheritance, are usually broke within 2 to 3 years because they're still operating with money mindsets that don't fit what they have financially today. And so they naturally run away from it.
All right, awesome. That's a great perspective, right? So yes, hard work can help get you there, right? But it's having that mindset of what you do with your money. One of the things I like to talk about is your relationship with money. And I believe that's an important part of your money mindset. And one of the things that we talk about on our show too is, basically taking your money and employing it to make you more money. If you treat your money as if it's an employee to you versus just something that will go away once you spend it, there's less of a mindfulness for you to want to keep it or get more of it, right? Because you feel like it's just something that's consumable that will just go away once you use it. I like that because having that good relationship, having that good money mindset will help you get into good money multipliers, right? And help you grow your money. So that's fantastic. There's another topic that you had sent me that you want to talk about, and that's automating savings. And I really like this because this is something that I do, right? So I actually have all the different accounts that I have set up that my money goes into. It's all automated, so I don't have to worry about it. When I get paid, my money gets distributed where I need it to go, and that's that. It's out of sight, out of mind for me, and it's not something I have to worry about. So if you could please share a little bit about your automated savings, what you wanted to talk about with that.
Sure. And I essentially did the same thing. As soon as I got my first job, I set up a whole bunch of different automated savings. So I signed up for the 401k. I signed up for the company stock plan. I signed up for the credit union. I had a brokerage account outside of my job. And so they had automated withdrawals. And again, when I started all of these things, I started them really small. So I think that the biggest thing is number one, to start. The number two is you start small, and then over time, and when I mean time, I'm talking 10, 20 years, I would little by little crank them up. So if I get a raise, I would split my raise with my savings. So I give a little bit more to savings and I'd enjoy a little bit more. And the same thing with my brokerage accounts. If I paid off a loan, I would take the loan payment and add it to my savings rate. And I wouldn't feel any different, right? Because I was already spending that money. But now the spending was generating savings for me so that the next time I had to buy a car or something, I'd have the cash for it instead of having to take out another loan. And the thing that happens is we all get busy in life, and you can say, I'm going to do this, but you forget. If it's automated and it's happening behind the scenes, no matter what you're doing, the system's working and it's guaranteed to have success. Compounding works. It's a proven principle that just happens. The thing with compounding is it takes time. So you're Navy, right?
That's correct.
So if you think about this, and it's not so much for, I'm thinking because it's more Air Force, an airplane taking off.
Oh, we have them too. We have aircraft.
You have them. I know. Yours tend to go off of aircraft carriers, right?
Yes.
They get slungshot out. But, for most people taking off from the ground, they're halfway down the runway. That plane is going 100 plus miles an hour. And you look out the window and you realize you're still on the ground. And that's what life is usually like. The problem is if you don't keep going and you don't keep building speed, you will never take off. And that lift off, and once you lift off, the plane soars. Money does the same thing. In the beginning, it might take you 10 years of grinding it out and saving, and you're like, I've hardly got any money in my bank account. But what you will find is if you keep it up and you don't touch it, over time, the money will start making more money than you can possibly save. And that's essentially when you have liftoff. And once you have liftoff, wealth just builds automatically. It's guaranteed.
Yes. So like you said, compounding 100% works. This is one of the things I talk about, especially with other military members that I work with. We have a program called Thrift Savings Plan. It's similar to a 401k. Basically, they just started the new retirement system for us in the military. And for those of us that are a little more senior, we didn't get the opportunity to get into it. But what I've tried to tell some of these younger men and women right now that while they're in is this new program where the government will match up to 5% of what you contribute. If you're not contributing at least 5%, you're keeping free money on the table. You want to start maxing this thing out because essentially you can be in a better spot money-wise and closer to retirement after being in for 10 to 12 years versus me, who I'm getting ready to complete a 20-year career, right? And I'm going to get my pension. But at the same time, that money that you could have built compounding over time, by the time you are 59 and a half and you can withdraw it and you've already contributed to it for this entire time, you're going to have a lot more money than I do. So I think it's very important. I also invest into the TSP, but because I am not part of the, I guess the younger generation, when they came out with this new retirement program, I don't get any matching contributions. So whatever I put into it is on me alone. So I think that's super important. One of the things I really like too about, your money making more money, especially with this automated savings, is all the REITs that I invest in, or all of my dividend paying stocks that I have them set up as drips, right? So it's something I don't even have to worry about. And as I get paid, and some of my REITs pay me every month, it just reinvests itself into that particular REIT or stock, and it buys more for me. So the value continues to go up. I continue to get paid, and it's just essentially at this point free money because I just let my money sit there. So you might not see the results, like you said, in the first 10 years, but if you look at it over time versus just leaving that money in a savings account or sticking it under your mattress, what a huge difference it's going to make, right? Okay, awesome.
Most people blow it and they don't even know where they spent it.
Right.
That's the bigger problem.
Well,
it's not hard to blow money.
Absolutely. And that's why it's important to start with a budget, right? So a lot of people that hate that word, it's like, it puts fear into a lot of people for whatever reason. But a good budget and sticking to a budget will make a world of a difference. if you're trying to get out of debt, if you're trying to save money, if you're trying to, raise capital for an investment that you want to get into, if it's real estate or anything like that, having a budget and a plan to get there is 100% the way to go. You can't just wing these kinds of things. Okay. So, hey, I really appreciate your perspective on that. There's something else you talked about, and this is great too, because I had a guest on recently that spoke about mindfulness and just having clarity in the things that you do. And one of the topics you wanted to talk about is knowing your purpose and having clarity. And I think, a lot of people don't want to relate that kind of stuff to money or making money or saving and investing. But if you're not in a good mental state, you're not going to make good decisions. So I think this is a really important topic, and I'd like to expand a little bit on that.
On mindfulness and just having that calmness in yourself. I think a big part of that is we live in a noisy world, and now more so than ever, especially with the devices we have, the internet, everything has been designed to grab your attention. And these companies are actually spending billions of dollars in understanding psychology of how to keep you hooked. And I think we get stuck inside of that paradigm. And mindfulness to me is nothing more than disconnecting, kind of getting back to nature, kind of taking that time to just be quiet with yourself and to think and just to relax a little bit. If you start your day, I think a lot of people start their day behind. And if you're already starting your morning in a horrible state, you can imagine what the rest of your day is. But when you can start your day with calmness, if you have the ability to sit for 10 or 15 minutes and just enjoy your coffee and turn the world off and just be with yourself, I think the whole rest of your day starts to become a lot more successful. And so I think that is definitely a big part of it. And there is no right way to be mindful. I think it's just more just taking time out to be quiet. And it could even just be going for a walk in nature and just turning everything else off.
I agree. And especially with the taking a walk in nature, right? Living out here in Hawaii, I'm pretty fortunate that I can walk outside and I'm already in a beautiful, ecosystem with wildlife everywhere. Just awesome. I go out in my backyard and I look at my banana trees with the 2 racks of bananas hanging off. And it's a nice sight to see when have a little bit of a self-sustainment, right? So my wife, just a little bit of background. So my wife and I are vegetarians. So being able to grow a lot of our own food is pretty awesome.
Do you, when you open the banana, do you do it from the top where the stem is, or do you do it from the bottom?
So it depends. I've done it both ways. I know the right way to do it is to open it from the bottom. And a lot of people don't know that, because when you open it from the bottom, you don't really get like the little strings from the side, because that's the way it's meant to be open. It's a lot easier. And this is actually a pretty good analogy here, right? Because, or a metaphor here, right? Because, just because the banana is easier to open from the top of the stem down doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. Right. And it's the same thing when you look at your finances, right? There's different ways to do it. There's a right way, there's a not so right way, and there's a completely wrong way. You don't just take a banana and slit it open with a knife and open it like that. I mean, that would be weird, but I've done that before too. Only if it's frozen, if we froze it in the peel. No, I really appreciate what you said about that. And, that's one of the things that I've talked about in the past is, when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is I do a morning affirmation for what it is that I want to have happen that day. Another thing I like to do is meditate for 5 to 10 minutes. Just, it doesn't have to be guided or anything like that, but just, it could be lying there in bed with my hands on my chest, or just sitting up and just relaxing and just clearing my mind of everything. And then normally after that is when I would do my affirmation. So I think having that clear mind and that clear conscious before you start your day, it completely erases whatever you had that was scripted, right? Because a lot of times people will get up in the morning and it's the same thing every day. It's the rat race, right? You get up, you have your cup of coffee, you brush your teeth, you shave, you go to work, and that's just the way it is every day. It's Groundhog Day, right? So if you can get up and you still do, you can still have the same routine every day, but if you get up and you clear out your palate, you clear out your mind before you start your day, every day will be a fresh, brand new day versus doing the same thing over and over and over again. And that will help give you that clarity that you need as you're moving on. So another thing that I like to do, it might not look like it too, is I do yoga. So my wife and I will do yoga, and usually it'll be in the morning or sometimes even before bed, just like a light, just something before, just to put us at ease before you go down for the night. I think it's important to clear your mind when you first wake up, and also to clear your mind before you go to bed. Definitely appreciate that.
Well, have you checked out movement culture?
I have not.
So
I'm writing that down.
It's different than yoga. It's advanced body movements that allow you to build strength, control, and flexibility. So like the guys who are really good at this, they can do handstands, which, okay, that's cool, but they can stop at any part of the handstand. So they can be at a 45-degree angle and they can hold themselves there.
That's is some serious core strength right there.
Yeah. And that's what these guys so we have forgotten how to move as people because we sit in chairs all day. We don't actually get out and move and climb mountains and be part of nature and do that. If monkeys can swing from tree to tree, why can't we?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that, and again, I'm not trying to brag about where I live, but living here in Hawaii, and I'm thankful that the military stationed me here. And this is where I plan to stay when I retire, just because we've fallen in love with it so much since we moved here. There's so much to do outdoors here. The beaches, there's snorkeling, diving. Then you have all the hikes that we have out here. And it is so important to be able to get out and just be, immerse yourself in nature. One of the things we love to do as a family is go on a hike and, just put yourself in the middle of nowhere and just enjoy being present. Right. Definitely think that's awesome. Would really appreciate this pandemic to be over so we can start doing more of that again, because it's been a little difficult. So right now we just do walks in the neighborhood, which isn't as beautiful, but it's still got that Hawaiian charm, Another segment I want to talk about is, and sorry, because I can get kind of lost talking about that kind of stuff. I love it. But the other segment I want to talk about is for our small business owners, right? And that's profit first in business. And, I was watching some of your videos and listened to some of your podcast episodes too, talking about this. Very intriguing. So for the folks that listen to my show that own a business, this is definitely for you. You're going to want to hear what Rocky's going to share here. So Rocky, if you could please talk about profit first.
So the surprising thing is most business owners don't look at their financial statements, and they love to do what they love to do in their business. They're technicians, and that's all wonderful. But if you're not paying attention to the numbers, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And that's a big problem. So I partnered with Mike Michalowicz. He created a system for entrepreneurs to be able to handle their finances without having to read their financials, because most of them aren't accountants and they really don't want to be. So we start with the number one principle, which is to look at the equation for how your business runs differently. So in the past, it was always sales minus expenses equals profit, which meant profit was a leftover. It was something that happened at the end of the year. It was an event that your accountant told you about at tax time, and you'd ask where the money is, and they just laugh at you and tell you spent it. It doesn't really exist. And Mike said, this is totally wrong. So what he did is he said, let's do sales minus profit equals expenses. So essentially, same principles as we talked about earlier. You're paying yourself first. You're taking the money out of your business in a systematic way up front, and then you're learning to spend what's left. So you'll look at your bank account and there'll be less money in there. And most of you are very resourceful. When you have less money, you know how to make wiser decisions because now you're forced to. And so you'll get it done. And that's basically based on Parkinson's law, which is very simple to lifestyle inflation. So Parkinson's law states you will use up all of the resources that you were allocated. So if you have 3 weeks to do a project, it'll take you 3 weeks. If you have $100,000 to run a business, you'll take $100,000. But if I tell you you need to get it done in 3 days, you'll find a way to get it done in 3 days. If I tell you you have to run your business on $10,000, you'll find a way to do it. And so if we implement that by taking your profit first, by paying yourself first, by setting aside money for taxes, you tend to become more resourceful. And so it's basically an automated system for businesses to be able to do the same principles we talked about earlier, but inside their business so they can make better financial decisions.
Let's take a quick break from today's episode to hear from our show sponsors. Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Mike Cav with Average Joe Finances. You know, we're living in some pretty tough times right now, and if you don't have life insurance, you should probably get it. You need to protect yourself, protect your family, and protect what you own. Check out the link below in the show notes or in the video description. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Mike Cav from Average Joe Finances. Just want to talk to you today about Prep Agent. If you're interested in learning how to become a real estate agent and being able to pass the test on your first try, check out Prep Agent at www.prepagent.com. Use code AVGJOE, that's Average Joe, AVGJOE, to get an additional 20% off.
You're listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. Whether it's single or multifamily real estate, the stock market, or side hustles, we discuss it all. Strap in and enjoy the ride.
Think back, everybody. Let's get back into it. You know, I was watching one of Mike's videos last night, actually. I think it was his TEDx talk. That was basically the one thing that he pulled up on the slide where he showed the original equation of sales minus expenses equals profit. And then he's like, hey, let's change the mindset, right? And sales minus profit equals expenses. And one of the things he talked about was using it as like having a plate of food, right? He used the analogy of basically where we as Americans, our food portion is much larger than the rest of the world, right? And also much larger than what it was 200 plus years ago. You know,
20, well, even 40 years ago.
Right,
I remember when I was a kid and you went to a restaurant and you asked for a cup of juice, you got this little teeny cup, like 2 sips worth. Now you get a 40-ounce big gulp and you're allowed to refill it as many times as you want.
And then we wonder why people have diabetes, right? So, yeah. So, you know, looking at it from that perspective where if you make your plate smaller, you're going to think about what you're putting on the plate more, you know, what's more important, right? What's important to have on that plate and what's going to add the most nutritional value to you, right? And how you use that wisely, use the space on the plate wisely. So the smaller the plate, the smaller the space, the less you have to work with and you have to make it work, right? So he used that metaphor when he talked about, you know, money. So if you're taking your sales and then you're paying yourself first, right? You're splitting up the profit first. Then what's left over is for expenses. It's going to make you rethink what you're spending your money on for expenses. And I really dig that. I think that's a great mindset to have. There's a book on it, right? It's called Profit First, and it's written by Mike. How do you say it, Mike? Michalowicz, right? Okay, so Mike Michalowicz. And now I know that this is something that's a popular topic for you. You talk about it a lot. Actually, you started a podcast on this, right?
It's called Profit Answer Man.
Okay, awesome. And the whole point of that podcast is to discuss this mindset, right? And helping small business owners or even larger business owners, you know, switch from that original sales minus expenses equals profit to sales minus profit equals expenses mindset. If you could, you know, how long have you been doing that podcast or actually offering your business coaching expertise to these business owners?
So I went full-time last year with Profit First. I joined up with Mike in the middle of last year. So I've been with him for over a year now. It's been a lot of fun. The podcast was started earlier this year, right in the middle of COVID pandemic. It was on the list of things to get done and COVID made it happen, right? You got to get going. And that's okay. You know, even in bad times, opportunities present themselves and you just have to figure your way out and take that step forward. So there's nothing wrong with that. But it's been a lot of fun. I mean, we're making massive differences in business owners' spending behaviors. And just by challenging them, why are you spending all this money? It really helps to bring things in control. And it's the same thing for people. Go look at your spending as a person and really challenge yourself to say, where is all my money going and why am I spending it on that? Does it really fit with what I truly want in life?
Even with that explanation, you said something that was amazing. And, and it has to do with what we're going through right now. A lot of people can relate to this because of the pandemic and COVID and everything. And, you said, even in bad times, opportunity presents itself. And you guys took the opportunity of the situation that you were placed into because of this pandemic. And you were able to start off and kick off this podcast, which is amazing. So you've been doing this, you said, now for about a year and a half, and the podcast you just started this year. Since you've kind of switched over to doing this, like, so you do business consultations, right?
hmm
So can you tell me what it is you personally enjoy about being able to help out these business owners?
A big part of it is a mindset shift. The other part of it is most of these business owners absolutely hate doing what I do. And so it's like a perfect match because I love doing what I do and they hate it. And so it's fun because if you're not looking at your money, you're in trouble. So I can truly change their lives and give them freedom. When you can make that kind of an impact in someone's life and give them the freedom to be able to go live their life on their terms, who wouldn't want to do something like that? You just got to figure out what it is that you have to offer that allows people to do that. And it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. A lot of fun. And, one of the things that I think people are going to notice that just, besides the business consultations, but in anything relating to how you handle your money, there's two words that keep coming up that I've heard you say several times, that I've said several times. And that's, your mindset shift, right? Your mindset or shifting your mindset, and just how you relate yourself to, again, your relationship with money. But at the same time, some of these business owners, like you said, they're not even paying attention. And when you talked about the old way of doing things, at the end of the year, when they're trying to figure out, what they made for profits for the year, the accountant's running joke was, "Oh, you spent it all," right? And it's funny, it's funny, but it's not funny, because for a lot of people, that's reality. So
Mhm.
the fact that you're able to sit down with these business owners and help them change how they're looking at their money and actually pay attention to where it's going, they're probably realizing that they're making a lot more than they thought they were, and that they were able to cut out some unnecessary expenses that they really didn't need to have. I want to kind of shift back to you personally again, right? So you started off essentially here with nothing when you moved here when you were 2 years old, right? Now, what is it that you did to start your financial freedom journey you think anybody else can do if they put their mind to it and just shift their mindset, right? So I guess let me rephrase this a little bit. What is it that you did differently than what other people are doing? Let's say graduating high school, going to college, and starting their career. What did you do differently to put you away from that pack, the rat race, so to speak?
So, number one, I had a goal in mind. I mean, from before the time, even when I was in high school, I wanted to be a millionaire. That was my goal. So, if I want to do that, what are the principles that I need to learn to do that? So, for me, it was reading the Wall Street Journal, reading Money Magazine, listening to financial shows, and getting information. Two, it's taking action. So, by setting up all those automated saving systems and having the discipline to never take money out of them, because I had that bigger goal, I had the bigger why, and I would constantly sit down, a couple times a year, and I would run my numbers. Okay, here's where I'm at today, and here's where I want to be. If I keep doing what I'm doing, how close am I to hitting my target in 20 or 30 years? And so it's constantly measuring against that. And you could build spreadsheets to do it. I've been using Quicken since the early 90s. So I can show you where all my money is. And Quicken would always have a little calculator in there that you could open it up and you could put in how much money you had today, how much you're going to put in every year, what percent of return that you think you're going to get. And it would tell you where you would end up. And then you'd know, okay, I'm behind track. I need to tweak it up. Or I'm on track. Life is good. Let's see if this really works out like the calculator says it does. So be clear on your goal, put the steps into action, and don't steal from yourself. And the same thing happens in Profit First. Mike talks about it too. We all steal from ourselves. We take money out of our retirement account, right? We take money out of the money that we've designated for long-term savings, and we blow it on something stupid. That's the problem. I never did that. I had you know, that ideal that I'm not going, this is what it's for, and I'm not touching it.
Very, very disciplined. One of the things you said is that you had a bigger why, right? And I think, this question comes up a lot with folks that I have on my show, like, what is your why? And I think you really explained that very well. You had a goal, right? Your goal was that you wanted to be a millionaire from a very young age. You took action, right, on your why. And then, of course, you use spreadsheets to track everything and kind of project where you wanted to be in, 10, 20, 30 years. And you constantly checked on it to make sure you were on track. And if you weren't, you adjusted to get yourself back on track. So just to follow up on that, how often would you look at, where you currently are versus where you need to be to meet your end goal?
I think when I was younger, I would do it a lot more often because you don't believe it or you want to test it or you're not sure. Honestly, I think if you do it a couple times a year, you're good. Even if you did it once a year and sat down and figured it out, like these days, we do things about once a year. We track, hey, how did everything go this year? What was my change in net worth? What does our savings look like? Where is our money flowing? Are we okay with where it's flowing, or do we need to make a change? So yeah, you once a year is probably enough for the big planning, but then on a every 2 weeks, you at least need to pay your bills, make sure that, there's no surprises there, that there's nothing coming up that you didn't expect. So you're doing the little things on a every couple week basis, but then the big planning, I think, can be done once a year.
I like that because my wife and I will go over our expenses probably, well, obviously every month, right, when we pay our bills, and we have something that we, it's called sinking funds. And, it's very similar to what you're talking about with your automated savings, right? So we have specific accounts designated for different things, right? So we have a holiday and birthday account that's where all the money that we're going to use to buy presents for everybody for the year. So we have a specific amount of money monthly go into that. And then we have a specific amount of money monthly go into our pet and vet account. Then we have a home and car repair account. We have our emergency funds, and then we have our savings account, which we don't keep too much in savings because we like to not have too much cash lying around. The only cash we have lying around is pretty much for emergencies, right? And I probably do need to have a larger amount of cash, at least for when opportunities present itself, right? So one of the things I want to start doing is I'm going to start putting money into my brokerage account and just kind of letting that stack. And when those opportunities arise, I've got the cash to just move it when needed, right? I think that's very important. That whole, again, it's coming back down to mindset, right? And discipline. And you've really, I think, hit the nail on the head with how disciplined you are with your entire, mantra in life, just besides your own personal finances and your goals, but what you're doing when you help these other young businessmen and women, and especially doing the stuff that they don't like doing that you actually enjoy doing. So being able to do something that you enjoy, and this is something I like to talk about a lot too, is if you're doing something that you enjoy, do you really even consider that work? you're essentially doing something to you that's enjoyable. It's a hobby and you're making money from it. That's a win-win if you ask me.
That's
So
a massive win-win.
absolutely. I'm glad that you enjoy that. I'm glad that you enjoy taking care of these guys. And, moving on to the next thing is I want to talk about, again, this is back to you personally. And if it gets too personal, that's fine. You don't have to share, but I'm just interested in like, what kind of asset classes are you currently invested in yourself?
So the way I look at things, there are three asset classes. One is paper assets, which is your stocks, your bonds. REITs would essentially fall into that too. Second is real estate. And the third is owning a business and having a business. So I have assets in each of those classes. You do not need to have assets in each class, but it's a good idea to have assets in at least two of those classes. Not to just go with an all-in one-time strategy. So having money in real estate and in stocks and bonds is good. Having money in a company and in something else is really smart, right? So always want to be a little bit more diversified. And then within each class, in the real estate class, I do flips and I do rentals. So both within the real estate class. In the stock, in the paper assets, I have a variety of different assets, and I'm actually in the midst of really doing a much better job now of coming up with an investment philosophy for my paper assets. And what I mean by that is people don't realize this. The world is changing. And what I mean by that is when I was a kid, I remember when interest rates were 18%. And I remember when the Dow was triple digits. What I mean by that is it was under 1,000. And from then to now, interest rates have gone from 18% to zero. And the Dow has gone from, 900 to whatever it is 26,000. Well, those things don't always go those directions. The reason interest rates ended up at 18% is because they were low and they went very high, and the stock market had gone down for years. I think we're at another turning point where things going forward aren't always going to follow the same pattern as going back. Does that mean that the stock market won't be higher next year? Absolutely not. I can't predict the future. But if you look at it from a macro standpoint and with what the government's doing, I think the rules of the past may not be the rules of the future. When does that change occur? I've got no idea, but at least be aware of it. Don't be fixed in how you're going to get to the future. So know what you want as a destination, but don't say this is the path to the destination, because you may find out it's not.
But if you look at the trends for the stock market, going back all the way back to the 1930s, right, when we had the Great Depression, and if you look at just where it's gone, it constantly goes up, right? Even when you have these blips where these drops or these corrections, right? I think even if we have a huge correction and we see a huge drop in the stock market, it's eventually going to wind up back where it was and continue trending upward. Right now, it might take years for that to repair itself.
It might take. We've had many periods of 15 years that were essentially flat. I mean, if you look at 2000 to 2015, we were essentially flat. It went up and down a lot in that period, but that was a flat period of returns. And so if you said, I'm just going to buy and hold and not think about it, you would have had 15 years and gone nowhere.
Right. That's why it's important to pay attention. So I see a lot of people though right now talking about in the stock market, buy and hold, set it and forget it, which is fine. Right. Just depending on what you're investing in, what different, paper you actually putting your money into.
That's great if you're 22 years old.
Right. But that's what I was going to get to.
62 years old.
So like example, my in-laws, right. They just retired. Right. So if they were to, do that now at this time and put all of their, I guess you could call it eggs into one basket at this point, with how uncertain things can be or the way things are trending, it could spell disaster. You can lose everything. So key takeaway here is, like you said, is diversity, right? And having these three different asset classes, not just investing in the stock market, but also get into real estate or invest into a business. I don't think a lot of people realize that you can invest into real estate quite easily if you just learn a little bit. It's not that hard to learn. Even someone like me was able to do it. I'm not the smartest guy. I read like a book or two about it and said, okay, let's do it. I surrounded myself with smarter people in that space and learned from them. And I still constantly do that. I do a monthly meeting with real estate investors here, local real estate investors here in Hawaii. Every month we sit down and we just talk. We talk about what we're doing. We do an education segment and everything. And I think just keeping that data fresh and just keeping it, in your brain at all times, it'll help you in your decision making as you move forward. So I happen to really enjoy real estate. So I want to kind of dig in a little bit on, what you're doing in real estate. So you said you do flips and you do rentals. Now for your rentals, are you doing turnkeys or are you buying like distressed properties that need a little love and fixing them up? And I'm not sure if you heard of the BRRRR method. You probably have, being in the real estate space, right? So are you doing more of like a BRRRR thing or are you doing turnkey?
I'm doing more of the BRRRR. So
Okay.
pretty much every one of the properties we bought had some level of distress, and we'd fix them up, take care of it, and bring them up to what was nice, and then you start renting them out. And if you go with turnkey, you're giving away a lot of the profit. And
Right.
that's what people don't talk about. Real estate, you make the money in real estate on the buy. And if you're paying retail, it's hard to make money these days. It really is. You should run the numbers. People don't run the numbers when they buy these properties to sit down and say, how much am I really going to make? And does this make sense? And that's the biggest thing I've noticed with real estate. People just don't run the numbers and they make bad decisions.
Right. So they get into it thinking, okay, well, this property can rent for this much and it's going to cost me this much for my mortgage. And they think that's good. And that's where their cash flow is going to come from. They're not taking into account any maintenance or repairs or, if there's things that weren't caught during the inspection and, all of a sudden now you have a leaky roof and that's going to cost $5,000 to fix. If you take that out of your annual profit, what did you really make that year? I think it's very important to run the numbers. And there's many, many, many free calculators out there too, where you can put vacancy. I mean, you can put everything, all the little different details, how much you're going to put into property management if you're not going to manage it yourself, right? So for me, I invest out of state. So I don't even invest in Hawaii besides my primary residence, right? Eventually, I probably will buy more property out here, but right now I'm buying back in Virginia, where I was stationed at for 15 years because I know the market out there, right? And I built a team first. That was the first thing I did was I got a property manager, a contractor, and a good realtor out there. And a lot of people, will tend to buy the property first, figure out the rest later. And then you run into all kinds of problems. Yes, definitely appreciate that perspective. Now, I do know a lot of people that do turnkey and they stand by it too, just depending on how you go into it, right? They'll buy a property that's already fixed up, it's cash flowing, and a lot of the worries you didn't have to worry about in the beginning are no longer there because the property was essentially fully gutted and renovated. But at the same time, if you were to sit there and do the work yourself, you would have spent way less money and your mortgage would be way less too, because you wouldn't have such a large loan out on that property in the first place. So that would definitely increase your cash flow. But a lot of people, for them, from what I've seen, it's the time commitment that they don't have the time to put into it. But again, that's going to come back to building your team. If you have a team you can trust that can go out there and get the work done, you're better off buying those distressed properties.
You need to make sure that the people who essentially flipped your property to you did quality work. And I think that's where the struggle comes in, is if you're buying it remote, you don't know what the quality of the work is. And it might take 2 to 3 years for that to show up. Right.
And it will. It doesn't take long. 2 to 3 years might seem like a long time, but trust me, when you're looking at 2 to 3 years as 24 monthly payments of what you're getting in rent, how much that adds up to and how much you're spending on that repair because somebody decided to cover a foundation crack, patch it up and paint it, and you don't even know it's there, that can cause a serious problem when those walls start to collapse and cave and crack and everything. So the other thing, and I just want to talk about this briefly, is your asset in business class, right? In businesses and small business. So when you're talking about having a business as an asset class, are you talking about owning the business yourself, being a small business owner, or are you talking about investing into a business as a partner or a limited partner or something like that?
I think either is fine, depending on what your goals are. They're just two different ways of doing it, just like renting and flipping are two ways to be in real estate. And it could also be a side business. So it could be something that you just do a little bit on the side. The fact is that you know how to generate revenue, right? So that if you've got this little thing going on the side and you lose your job, well, you don't have to think, how am I going to do something tomorrow? You've already got a side business that now you just crank up the levers on, and it's going to start generating cash flow for you. So it's just different options. Maybe your side business becomes your retirement business. And so that's an option for you. So there's a million ways to do this. It's not like you have to go buy this brick and mortar store and run a business itself. Even being a solopreneur or doing something like that is fine as well.
Fantastic. I love it. That's a great response. And it's kind of what I was looking for too, because one of the things I'm doing here with Average Joe Finances, with my blog and podcast and everything, is essentially making this a small side hustle for myself. Because when I retire from the Navy, my plan is to continue doing real estate as an investor, but also being a realtor. I want to focus on that, but at the same time, I want to go a little more, or I guess all in on Average Joe Finances with the blog and the podcast, and just put a little more time into it. Because right now, this is, again, it's kind of like a side thing for me until I retire, because I just don't have the time to commit to it 100%. But when I retire from the Navy, I feel like being able to do something, and this is kind of tying back into what we talked about before, but being able to do something that you're passionate about and helping other people and that you just truly enjoy. Would I even really consider this work? It would essentially be a hobby that I'm getting paid to do, which is really exciting. And just the thought of it and just building this to get there has just been awesome, and just such an exciting time for me, as I know, as you were building yours and getting there was an exciting time for you. I really appreciate your perspective on all this and you taking the time to speak with me today. I would like to ask if there is, if anybody wanted to find any information on you, where they could go look, if you have a website or social media that people could look you up and check out Rocky Lalvani.
So there are two websites. If you're the business owner, it's profitcomesfirst.com. And there's the Profit Answer Man podcast that goes with that. If you don't have a business and you don't care about that, then it's Richer Soul. And there's also the Richer Soul podcast, where we talk about all the different parts of life and how do you build your dream life. So both of those places are available, and either one, it's Rocky at those websites, and you'll get directly to me.
That's where you can go to find Rocky Lalvani and more information about him. His two different websites for two different businesses, for stuff that he really enjoys doing. Really awesome having you on here today, Rocky. I'm going to make sure I have all your links in the show notes, so it'll be easier for folks. Instead of having to type it in, they can just click away and find you.
Thank you so much. It was a blast to join you on your show today.
Thanks for listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast, your source for beating debt, saving money, and investing. Learn more at averagejoefinances.com.
The Average Joe Finances Podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Do not use this for any real estate or investment making decisions. All views by myself or our guests are solely our own and do not reflect the opinion of our employers.